Spookiest pumpkin carving. Just kidding. Hi folks! Here are what you'll need to start carving a pumpkin for Halloween. Well, for next year. Or for Thanksgiving in just a few weeks. You'll want to pick the right size of pumpkin based on your planned design. I was thinking to carve a scary face, so I selected a tall pumpkin, which was also big, to hopefully get one with as thick of a wall as possible. The goal was to make room for error, since this was only my second time to carve a pumpkin, and I was sure I was going to make mistakes. The thicker the wall, the easier it'll be to correct my mistakes. You'll also need a straight edge knife. Perhaps a paring knife with a guard would be safer, as it can get slippery while peeling or cutting the pumpkin. To dig the seeds out of the pumpkin, I used a spoon. A rice paddle will also work for this purpose. You will also need some sort of a container where you can soak the pumpkin in water and vinegar in order to preserve it or delay its rotting. You will need to soak your pumpkin in a mixture of water and vinegar or lemon in order to make it last longer, especially because it will be outside the fridge. If your design involves carving the pumpkin, you may need a clay carving tool or sculpting tool. Image number 1. An X-Acto knife is also useful in carving, especially when removing peel in select and tiny areas. If you so desire, you can add color to your carved pumpkin. I might prefer colorless for a more organic look, but for this pumpkin, I decided to have fun and to play and enliven the carving by adding a little bit of color. You may want to use petroleum jelly to coat your pumpkin inside out in order to delay rotting. When it dries, it shrinks. It also rots sooner once carved and left out. The petroleum jelly will help lock the moisture in. Once I had all that I needed, it was time to start. Pick a side where you want to make a hole so you can dig the seeds out. I chose to make a hole at the bottom since it's the hidden part. After that, I rinsed the pumpkin inside and outside. Next, I mixed 1 part vinegar to 10 parts water in a container, enough to cover the top of the pumpkin. Then I soaked the pumpkin for at least 30 minutes. Based on the design that I had planned, I outlined the outside shape using an X-Acto knife. Then I started peeling inside the outline with my small knife. After I had peeled the area within the outline, I started carving the design. I picked an image online mainly to use as a guide for placing the parts of the face. Then I started carving the eyes, nose, ears, and lips just roughly. Once I was okay with their placement, I started editing and adding details. The pumpkin wall was only over an inch thick, and there was not a lot of room for detailing for someone like me who was still learning, and I had to stop many times on areas where I had carved almost too much. One has to be careful in carving. I realized that you can make the pumpkin wall a little too thin and tear it, and all your hard work would be ruined. Once I was done carving, I soaked the pumpkin once again into the water vinegar mixture for another 20 minutes. After this, I let the pumpkin air dry before continuing the work. I then applied petroleum jelly to all areas of the pumpkin, paying special attention to the inside and carved area in order to delay rotting. If you're not too worried, skip the peeled area in this step. That way, it would be easier to handle. Since I decided to play more and add food color to my carved pumpkin, using petroleum jelly was to be my last step. Once you're done carving your design, re-soaking it in the water vinegar mixture and air drying it, you can start adding some food coloring. Liquid or gel color are easier to use than powder as they're easier to control, but you have to do it quickly. Pumpkin flesh is moist and will make the colors bleed and scatter in areas that you don't want them to. Unless such is your intention for the effects, you may want to apply petroleum jelly as soon as you finish adding color. I let it soak a little here for a couple of minutes as I was still learning the effects of color to the flesh before finally coating with petroleum jelly. I was already done, but decided to change it a little and to add eyeballs. Since the eyeballs were not originally part of the carved face, they had to be bigger than the eye holes that were already carved because they will shrink. They seem to have shrunk to about 4/5 of their original size. Another solution for this is to carve 1 to 2 extra pairs of eyes of different much bigger sizes in case you'll need to replace the original ones that have shrunk. Also, you can just totally avoid making holes to make eyes and just carve them to shape so you won't have to worry about eyeball size changes later on. I could have stopped right here after adding the eyeballs. It looked scared with the mouth so wide open. Then I thought maybe I could add just one more detail. So here's a couple of fangs. They shrunk too, so a much bigger pair was made so that when Halloween came, they were still in an okay size. Petroleum jelly was then applied soon to the eyeballs and fangs before the pumpkin was placed on display. I must admit, it was not what I planned, but I definitely had fun playing with carving and colors, and it looked pretty spooky, don't you think? Here, you know what you'll need to start carving. If you like this video, please subscribe. Soon I'll be posting another video showing how I carved a Thanksgiving pumpkin. Happy carving!